The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our first webinar Wednesday of the year. We're very excited for today's call. Today, first of all, my name is David Brunet and I'm the VP for the Communication Committee at International ACAC. This is the first of a long year's worth of webinar series. A couple housekeeping notes before we introduce our panelists today. Just to let everyone know that there will be a time at the end of the presentation that you'll be able to ask questions of our panelists. And there's a question box in your dashboard that you're able to send us and submit questions as you wish. Another piece just to mention is that today's presentation will be recorded and then will be put on our website for all to see in our Webinar Wednesday section of the website, so you can go back and listen again if you need to. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce throw it to our panelists to introduce themselves. Johanna, why don't you start?
Hi, everyone. My name is Johanna Fishbein. I'm past president of International ACAC. And this means that part of my purview is that I oversee the request for proposal process, or the RFP process, for the 2020 conference bids.
Sure.
Drew, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Drew Crawford from Case Western Reserve University, proud 2017 host of the conference.
And I'm Becky Ansira from Tulane University in New Orleans, proud co-host with our neighbors at Loyola University New Orleans of the 2018 conference.
Great. And I'm Teresa Schweizer. I'm the Executive Director of International ACAC. Hello from Arlington, Virginia. And I work very closely with our hosts in planning every year's conference and, of course, in the review of proposals as they come in. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And so I will take it from there for a little bit, I think. And just to add that Teresa and I worked together to plan the conference at Case Western with Drew. So we'll be sharing some of our perspective there. Okay, so our agenda looking ahead. And the first thing to note is that the slides say International ACAC Conference New Orleans, because this is a repeat of the presentation shared at the conference this summer. So the content will be very similar. We're going to go through it a little more quickly just to make sure we have time for questions. So if you were at that session, it will be a little repetitive. Okay, so we're going to start today just by looking backwards very quickly at sort of the history of the conference, and then I think the most meaty part of this session will be hearing from Becky and Drew about why to host, and then we'll talk about some potential challenges as well as benefits. Teresa will then come in to talk about budget, and then we'll tell you exactly how to submit your proposal, how to ask questions, and all things like that. I can do the next slide, David, please. So here's the history of our conference. It started at GW, and last year was at, or this past summer was at Tulane and Loyola. This upcoming summer, it will be at Western University in Canada, and we are looking for bids for the 2020 conference. So we plan these more than a year out. You will hear about why that timing is important. The other thing to note is there's been significant growth. And we always do try to make sure we're varying the location in the US or in Canada so that we bring our members to different parts of North America at the moment. But we are open to bids from outside North America as well. Next slide. So this is just an overview of 2018 International ACAC membership. These are overall numbers. As you can see, there's been a growth in membership across categories. And so when you host a conference on your campus, you are getting a really good mix of people coming from all over the world and from various sectors related to supporting students on their journey to higher education. Next one, sorry. More interesting for people, I think, who are bidding for this conference would be to know who's actually at the conference. So this was the 2018 conference in New Orleans. You can see the total attendees was about 1,400. And we tried, it was the year that we had the best balance between college representation and high school representation. So it was nearly 50-50. And then it was a mix of other people coming to the conference as well, CBOs, individuals, which would be individual education counselors, and for-profit and nonprofit and retired members. So when you host a conference, you are bringing a range of new faces and people to your campus to really get the experience of what it's like to be on your campus, to be in your part of the country or the world, and to really get to have that student experience a little bit as well. The next one. And here you can see the top 10 countries represented between 2017 and 2018. There were a few changes, but you can see you're bringing people a good range from all over the world. The US continues to be the most popular, but the countries below it do shift a little bit. So it's really exciting for us to see these new countries coming up, and you will be bringing these faces to your campus. So now on to the really good part, which is why host, and the people who can talk best about this will be the people who have hosted in the past. So I think we'll start with Drew, and he will sort of go through the benefits to his institution, any personal benefits, potential challenges, and then I think we'll wait on timeline and talk about that when you and Becky are on together. Does that sound okay? Okay,
yeah.
So Drew, you're up.
Yeah, there were a multitude of institutional benefits in terms of hosting the conference. Certainly, we saw that as a way to grow our international profile and also increase international applications. I recently ran the numbers, and we did get an immediate 20% boost in international applications from our conference, which I think was very good. But also in the era of the Trump election, we did have that. So I think given all the circumstances, that was a pretty fantastic number. But we were also looking to diversify our international applications a lot, and that definitely happened. I would say it was at least a 50% increase in the amount of countries that we even got applications for. So that was pretty exciting, and we saw some really immediate benefits from that as we were able to select the class the following year. It also was super helpful to really put Case Western on the map. We had certainly been growing internationally. We've been growing internationally for the past several years, but this was another huge shot in the arm for us because we were able to really grow with the international mission that we had as a top 5 priority for the university, and also show off Cleveland. We were really excited to have people come to Cleveland, which was pretty exciting, and show that it was a pretty good city for an international audience, and there was a really good feel-good aspect of that. And then in terms of just some other things that we didn't necessarily anticipate or know about right away, but we did have an awesome, the camaraderie amongst our colleagues was pretty fantastic. So preparing for the conference was a really cool thing, and our staff really grew quite close and also made many more connections with other parts of the university that we hadn't done so. So that was a really exciting part. The personal and an institutional but personal benefit would be traveling the following year and the year after hosting the conference at, again, just a very high profile. And it was really cool to have people at high schools we were visiting abroad say that they had visited campus for the conference. They loved it, and that was a really feel-good thing. For the personal benefits, I would definitely say that it helped me plan something so large as that. I was one of 3 main people that helped plan, but we had many different organizations and subcommittees from that. But also just pulling off something that big and important was pretty exciting, and to show off a university that I care deeply about was a really good personal benefit. Again, from event planning as well, and also just getting to know international stuff more, if that makes sense. In terms of the challenges, I would certainly say that you have to plan 2 years in advance, and you have to really, from January of the year you're hosting all the way till when you're hosting, it becomes a full-time job. So that certainly was just something that I knew was going to happen, and a lot of people did, but you are really stacking on another full-time job on top of a full-time job. And then also just things that you think are going to go one way may not go one way. There were some parts of campus that we had planned to do events on that we couldn't because of construction, places we envisioned having events, and those changed, and there were a little more changes than I initially thought were going to happen, but we rolled with the punches and it ended up being better than I thought it was, better than I thought it could be. So I think I'll hold off on there. I know I'm going to remember a couple of things as maybe Becky gets talking, and maybe we'll talk about the timeline in a bit. So I think I'm going to stop there.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Drew. And Becky, if you wouldn't mind joining. So Drew hosted in 2017, so he's had a year to reflect. Becky just finished hosting a month ago, so her reflection will be a little more current. So Becky, if you don't mind now addressing the same question.
Yes, I don't think I can quote stats like Drew because it's been a whole month since we finished the conference. But I will say, in speaking to my coworker, Paul Burgess, who's our Director of International Recruiting, he said that he has had a much easier time planning his visits this year. Lots of people very excited about having attended the conference and just very receptive and open to scheduling appointments and scheduling visits. So that's been a really good benefit so far for our international team. As far as the goals for Tulane specifically in hosting this conference, international students don't typically think to come to the south of the United States. There's kind of a stigma about the culture here and particularly about New Orleans. A lot of international students maybe only know about New Orleans because of Katrina. So for us, it was really the opportunity to get a worldwide audience here on our campus, show them what Tulane and Loyola have to offer, show them how vibrant and alive the city of New Orleans is and how very international the city is in its makeup and its culture and its history. So it was very important to us as an institution. We want to grow our international numbers. It's something we've been working on for several years now, but having the opportunity to have so many folks from around the world here and show them exactly what Tulane has to offer, what New Orleans is like, it was a huge benefit for us. I think that in the years coming, it's going to pay off in increased diversity in our international population and just increased numbers. I think a lot of counselors in particular left here with a really positive view of the city and of both our institutions. I think it's going to be a more realistic option for a lot of students after just having them here. As far as our institution as a whole in the planning, Tulane has never done a conference really of this size. And so I think overall, the entire institution looked at this conference kind of as a testing ground as what can we do and what things are we capable of. We were very fortunate in that every division of Tulane really just bought into it 100% and wanted to put on the absolute best conference that they could. It was an opportunity for all of our divisions to sort of dig in and say, hey, this is what we can do. And we learned that, you know, we've got a lot of resources on our campus that maybe we're not utilizing to the best of our ability, that we were able to do things that hadn't been done before. And so it was really good growing experience, I think, for the whole institution. For our team in particular, I've never had such a great appreciation for the people that I work with as I had during this conference. The Tulane community is very service oriented, and it's ever since Katrina, it's been part of our curriculum. So it's really important for people in our community to be involved, and the level of involvement that we were able to get, not only just from our staff and their leadership roles in the conference planning, but from our community as a whole. We had faculty and staff and students all volunteering to be part of it and to be part of the planning. to be part of the execution. We had so many volunteers at one point, we had to turn people away because we just didn't have enough for them to do. And it just speaks to the nature of this community. Our staff has, as Drew said, the same thing here, very kumbaya moment. You know, our staff just really came together, so much dependent upon one another. And it also gave us the opportunity as a unit to give leadership roles within the conference to a lot of our staff. It was definitely not viewed as a project for the international team. It was a university-wide project. Every department across campus played some role, and it was a fantastic experience for us. I got to work with so many different people within our campus, and we had a unique experience in that we were co-hosting with Loyola. So I also got to outreach and work with some really great people who are just right next door that on a normal day-to-day basis, we really don't interact. And so we built a lot of great relationships with our co-hosts, also across our own campus. It's been amazing. And even in the community as a whole, we had a lot of folks not associated with the university who wanted to be part of it, who wanted to make donations. Local baker gave us some king cake, and you know, people just really embraced hosting the conference and having it here in New Orleans, and really wanted to show exactly what we have to offer. Personally, I have never planned an event of this size, and it was something that really, as Drew said, it does become all-encompassing as you get closer to the actual event itself. After we sort of pulled it all off, and I saw all of the things that we were able to do, it gave me an immense sense of pride in myself and in my team and in my institution. I kind of have this sort of Wonder Woman thing now where there's nothing I can't do because I planned an International ACAC conference. So, you know, we had 1,400 people come here from 90 different countries, and for the most part, it went off without a hitch. I mean, everybody's got some things that don't go exactly as planned, but it really did come together, and in large part, it was because of the team that we have. So it gave me a great amount of appreciation for my team and my institution, and it's probably the most that I've grown professionally in my career, and I've been in higher ed now for 20 years.
Great, thanks. And Becky, the one thing that maybe you could add, were there any potential challenges that people should be on the lookout for on your end?
Well, I think that the challenges are probably different for each institution. Our biggest fear in the conference was the weather, because you know, New Orleans in the summer is not always pleasant, and it rains a lot. So you know, we did have some plan Bs in place. And I always say that a plan B is not something that you think of when plan A fails. A plan B is a fully executed plan that's just waiting in the wings to be plopped in. So that was really our biggest fear, was that the weather wasn't going to cooperate. Navigating the partnership between Loyola, you know, that's a different sort of challenge that obviously, you know, Drew wouldn't have that. Everyone working on the conference was with Case. But, you know, navigating, not wanting to overshadow any other school, and to manage, you know, who owns what, and sort of divide out the partnership but still keep it as a team. Sometimes that was just challenging, figuring out everyone's roles.
Thank you. And I will just add before we go into timeline that I should have said at the beginning that my day job is a college counselor in Singapore. And one of the big benefits for college counselors is that we have a small budget, but it usually, many of our schools, it covers the summer conference. So I was able to see Cleveland and Tulane and Case, Tulane and Loyola all on our conference budget. And not only do you see the universities, but you stay there and you really get to spend time there. So when I speak to my students about those places, it's already made a huge difference. We're a week into school and I can talk about Tulane or Case Western in a very different way than I would otherwise. So there's some huge benefits on the college counselor side, actually getting to be on these campuses and see them. Okay, so then Drew, you mentioned that for you the timeline was January to July of the year you're hosting the conference. This is a full-time job, full steam ahead. Can you both, maybe Becky or Drew, talk about the timeline once you got the bid? Sort of what did you put in place and when were the critical times, just so people have a sense for what their crunch times might be?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll go first, Becky, because maybe you'll probably remember more than I do, since it was more than a year ago now. But I certainly receiving the bid, God, almost 2 years in advance, but more like a year and 8 months was like, okay, we received the bid and we have to start thinking of the really, really big picture things. So that was a lot of reserving really big spaces, getting estimates for dinners and closing receptions and those types of things. So there was a lot of really like 30,000 feet. Think about the biggest things. Think about what we need to plan in advance. Think about what's going on in the city during that week. Was there another conference? Is there another event? Things that we had to think about well in advance. But definitely the January before the conference, that's when things really got into full gear. The fall before that definitely was buy-in from other offices and those types of things. But January was bi-weekly meetings with a group of people that were involved in the conference, a monthly meeting with university events. I forgot what they called it, but it involved events in the police department and facilities, and we dominated those meetings every single month from January all the way until July, because that was the biggest thing happening on campus, and that includes commencement, and it was bigger than that in a lot of ways. But definitely just kind of those types of things, much more buy-in from staff and a lot more of that kind of day-by-day nitty-gritty details of those things. Organizing the workers and employees and student workers was a big thing that we had to think about a good 6 months in advance. And then really, particularly from March, especially May, June, but the 2 months leading up to the conference were the more granular details of where are people going to be assigned, where do signs go, and those types of things.
Thank you. Becky, anything to add there?
Yeah, for us, we actually, I think it was important for us, we started that buy-in process during the initial proposal phase, because if you don't have your whole campus on board, you might as well not submit the proposal, because you're going to need everybody to pull it off. So we really involved all of our campus partners in drafting the proposal, and we put holds on all of the spaces in the proposal just in case. So once we got the bid, then we went and confirmed that we were going to need all those spaces, so that was blocked off. And once we had all of the space locked down, there's a little bit of breathing room, but then you've got to start thinking about sort of the schedule and what things are coming next, and planning for. It was important that we had student involvement, and because most of our students attend from pretty far away, they all go home during the summer. So we devised a plan to create some summer fellowships, so we could keep a core group of students on campus during the conference, and they actually served as our student leaders. We offered some scholarships to international students to be able to take a summer course so that they could then stay and participate in the conference. So a lot of those things just logistically on our side, working with the faculty and the deans to make sure that we could get those things done. That took some time. Like Drew said, by the time January comes, working on just the program in and of itself and creating that document that was a very time intensive. It's a huge program. There's a lot of details. And then once that was done, it was just sort of full steam ahead, making sure that, all of the catering is locked down and every sort of vendor that we need to secure, we've got those things secured. The signage, the rentals, all of that sort of stuff. So it is definitely a full-time job. We also had an event planner who worked with us on the conference, and she was invaluable. The university contracts with her for our commencement ceremony, and so I've worked with her before. And so she's very familiar with campus, very familiar with all the key players, and that was a great help just to have another person, because like Drew said, this is a full-time job on top of your full-time job. So having another person that you can kind of relate to and sort of throw things off and know that they'll get done is very helpful. Marco from Rutgers said to me that, you have to understand that you're not a professional conference planner, that you're an admission professional who's also doing this conference on the side. And until Marco said that, it had not occurred to me that we were not professional conference planners, but that's actually true. So you've got a whole lot going on. You shouldn't expect to take any vacation basically for the first half of the year. And with the conference being in the US, and Canada's not going to have this problem, but for us, the week prior to the conference is 4th of July, so a lot of our staff are accustomed to having that week of vacation. And so we really communicated that way in advance. Hey, folks, we're not going to be able to have people take off the week before and the week of. So at least we got that out there. Folks weren't surprised by it. But you just kind of have to plan ahead and know you're going to need all hands on deck.
Thank you. And I would just add two things. One is that, yes, in terms of your timeline, you should plan, if you get the bid, you plan your vacation for the end of July, because that will be very important. And then the other piece is that from January to July, you will also have a weekly call with Teresa, and things you haven't thought of, she will remind you of. So she's also part of that timeline process. It will be with Teresa and the president-elect, so whoever's planning it at that time. So Drew and I spent many, many calls together.
For sure.
There's lots of support from International ACAC there as well. So thank you, Drew and Becky. They will both be available for questions afterwards. But I'm going to now move on to Teresa, who's going to share some insights about budgeting, which is a very important piece as well.
Okay. Thank you, Johanna. Yeah, if you are our host of our conference, I'll be your new best friend as we go through the year of planning. Thank you for joining us. Many of you, I think, were at our session in July in New Orleans, so I will be brief. But if you are planning to submit a proposal to host a 2020 conference, you've looked at our budget outline and format that we have published with the narrative for the request for proposal. If you're considering for your future conference, please look at that budget carefully. Couple things. We want the budget with your proposal submitted in the format that we have posted on the website. So just to be clear about that, we developed that template for a reason. It works for not only the evaluation process, but then that will become the basis of your budget should you be selected to host. And we have it formatted that way because it's a working document. The couple things of note is, of course, as we specify in the RFP, is we ask you to get to that cost per person. And that is for the conference expense only, and it's very important to remember that. It's not the pre-conference, it's not any extra activities in there like the 5K, the raffle, of course, there's hardly any expenses for that. And of course, now the golf tournament, those are all add-ons. And also housing. Housing is separate from the cost per person because that's an option that we give to members to stay on campus. So it's the cost per person for the conference itself. And in that outline we have for the budget, we really have all those costs. And if you have questions, that's where talking to prior hosts can be helpful for just all those pieces that you need to remember, from security to printing to signage to rentals, the extent of the rentals, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have a fairly good outline in what we have. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. But one of the parts we look as we evaluate the proposals, it's not the only deciding factor, but the cost per person is very important. We look for a cost per person between $250 and $300. This is, we do make money for the organization on our summer conference. Between it and membership dues are how we generate revenue for the organization. So this is how we make money for the organization, ergo that cost per person focus that we have. The other piece is we ask for a host donation, and the minimum we state is $50,000. Average the last couple of years has been $68,000, and in some instances, as we saw this year, a very generous support of the conference. And so we will be looking at that too in evaluation, what that is and how you reflect that in your budget, in addition to cash donations to come up with that donation from the host institution. I'm going to stop there because I think I'd rather answer questions. I know, as I said, a lot of you are here from the summer, so you've gotten this, and I'll wait and answer questions as they come up. And following the webinar, if you need some follow-up, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. So going forward in this webinar and also on our website, we have the link to information on how to submit the request for a proposal and the actual proposal guideline and budget template. This is due in early September, and the board will then review the bids at NACAC. So in terms of key dates that you just need, once you submit a bid, we will write to you and make sure there's one day that you will need to be available for any questions that may come up, because the board only has about 24 hours to review the proposals. And I think with that, we'll just share next steps. As Teresa said, if you have any questions, please reach out to her or I. Our emails are here. As Becky and Drew both said, make sure you have buy-in from the top, because that will be very important that your whole institution is on board with your plan to submit a bid. And then please reach out to former hosts or to us for any questions. And with that, I think we're going to open it up for questions. So David is going to help us hear your questions.
Sure. So the first question that we have is the International ACAC organization a nonprofit for tax purposes? That person is thinking of cost estimates for catering, if they should or should not include tax.
The answer is yes, we are, but Teresa, go ahead.
We are, in fact, a 501c3 organization. As far as including tax, it will depend upon your state. And if we can apply for tax exempt status to have waiving of taxes, we will absolutely do that.
All right, that's the only question we have right now. Anybody else have any questions to ask?
Okay.
No additional questions have come through. So we'll be happy to wrap up now. And as Johanna said earlier, of course, you can always contact the leadership team, Teresa and Johanna, if you have questions, and perhaps they can help direct you to the right resource as you prepare your proposal. Johanna and Teresa, do you have anything else to add?
I would just say we're very grateful for the wonderful interest we've had so far. We've had awesome hosting institutions. Case Western, Tulane, and Loyola are just one example of that. And so it's a great experience, and we hope that many people will consider it.
Wonderful.
I concur completely, and I will also say, just a different way to work with our members. And it's really gratifying from the organizational perspective. So thank everyone. And thank those of you who are considering submitting a proposal, because I know that it is a lot of work and a lot to consider.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you again to Drew and to Becky for being our panelists today and giving their expertise about running this conference. We know they put a lot of work into it as well. And so just as a parting note, just to everyone who's on the call, in case you want to watch this again and learn more, take a look back and see again what we said about the RFP process. This will be on our website starting tomorrow, likely. And so you can also access this webinar PowerPoint presentation, so for the links. And that's it for now. We'll wrap up, and we'll see you next time on Webinar Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.